Hi guys, and welcome to this week of English. I hope you had a really good weekend and got a bit of rest again. Obviously, there's been some big. For some reason I was sitting weirdly. I thought I'd rearrange sitting right after starting the video. So sorry for that. Yeah, so we had some interesting news from the government. So you'll be wondering about what's going on, and I think you are going to be told in due course. Even I'm not really sure about what's going on, but I can say that things are going to begin to change a little bit in terms of your teaching. So I do want to give you a bit of a warning that all the work, at least for the next few weeks, that I'm going to be setting you, I'm not going to be kind of giving you like a lot of feedback or kind of intense grading on it. I'm going to be looking over it and making sure you're okay and answering any questions you've got. But I do have to warn you, I have to take a bit of a step back from that just because we will actually be in school teaching seniors for a lot of the time, which will mean that kind of the time sort of runs out a little bit. I'm sure that everything will become more clear in the future weeks, at least I hope so. But I do want to give you a bit of warning on that. I will still answer any questions you've got, but the work I'm going to be setting is not. I'm not going to be kind of spending like a lot of time trying to mark it, and I do think you deserve to be warned about that in advance. Right, so let's pick up where we left off. I'm going to tell you a section of this story, and I've got some questions for you to do at the end and a task, so it should be nice and easy. Now remember, the story is always just off the top of my head. That's what makes it a listening task. You can't look it up, you can't go and follow along. And last week, I apologise, I missed out one detail of the story that then got a bit confusing in the questions. Eris, when she comes and storms the party, she doesn't just kind of put the apple down. She actually chucks it into the middle of the room, and everyone goes, "Whoa, what's that?" And so the question said, "Why does she throw it?" or something. And I understand that might have been a bit confusing if you're like, "I don't remember her throwing anything." So the party's been disrupted. Three goddesses believe they're the most beautiful, and Paris has chosen Aphrodite as being the most beautiful, and as such has been gifted or given the world's most beautiful woman, who we know it's called Helen. One downside being that Helen is already married. Now, in the last bit of the story, I told you that Paris is a shepherd, and he was a shepherd, but he was a bit more than a shepherd because in this story, all the main characters have got to be someone important. This story is not a story about normal people. It's a story about legendary warriors and kings and queens and gods. There's no kind of standard kind of everyday people like you or I in this story. So Paris is more than just a shepherd. He has a bit of a backstory where he was he kind of grew up not with his own family. He was, I think they lost him or something like that, and they rediscovered their long lost son. And Paris was just out being a shepherd one day and got found by a bunch of people, and it turned out that he was the son of a king. He was actually a prince. If any of you guys have seen, I don't know if you have, it's such a dated movie now. If any of you guys have seen The Princess Diaries, it's a bit like that, just living normal life, and then it turns out, oh, you're actually royalty. So he, in the kind of time around this, he finds out that he is a prince. He's the son of a king called King Priam, who's the king of Troy, this really big city. Anyway, things are looking great for Paris right now. He's a prince. He's not having to deal with smelly sheep anymore. And he's just been given the world's most beautiful woman, all for just making like one easy choice. So he finds out where she is, and it doesn't really deter him too much that she's already married. So he heads off to find her. And where he goes is, I don't know if obviously we've talked about this is all in Greece. This is all happening in Greece. And he sails off to her house. Now, she lives with her husband, who is a man called Menelaus. Everyone's got Greek names, so hopefully that you can kind of keep up and remember them. A man called Menelaus, who was a pretty senior kind of lord. He ruled his own kind of lands. He wasn't like big king, but he was pretty senior. He was known for having a fiery temper and this very, very like red hair. It's kind of, he was got a bit of a grumpy and angry and ferocious man. And in fairness, I don't think he was a very good husband. I don't think that he treated Helen very well. So Paris gets in a boat, sails over, and turns up at Menelaus and Helen's front door. And it's at this point I need to explain a concept to you that it sort of doesn't really exist in the same way nowadays. And it's a Greek word. So it's a bit like when I was teaching you Scots, you're going to learn a few Greek words. This word is xenia. And xenia is not spelled with a Z, it's spelled Xenia. You'll see the spelling on the slide. Now, xenia is the Greek kind of law they had in place of being a good host and being a good guest. So it's kind of like I think it's called, the other name for it is guest friendship. And there were these laws that were in place that you kind of had to adhere to, either as a host or as a guest. It wasn't like you get arrested or anything if you didn't stick to them, but it was kind of seen that the gods wouldn't be happy. They'd be very, very, very angry with you. So the idea of xenia is that if you show up to someone's house, they should let you in. They can't turn you away. And when you come in, they need to be able to feed you and clothe you and give you somewhere to sleep. And in turn, you need to kind of be very hospitable, be very friendly, and usually talk to them and tell them your own story and tell about themselves. Now, this idea was that the Greeks thought that at any point, Zeus, the top god, might show up in disguise at your door. And you obviously, if Zeus shows up at your door, you've got to let him in. You've got to give him somewhere to sleep and treat him well, listen to his stories. So they had this idea that any person at the door could actually be Zeus in disguise. So let's imagine anyone is Zeus and let's treat them all as such. And that's where this kind of xenia rule came from. So that's why I don't want you to see it as being kind of weird when Paris shows up at the door of Menelaus' house, knocks on it, and Menelaus is obligated to let him in. I do want to say, remember that Menelaus is a lord and Paris is a prince. So, maybe it would have been a bit different if Paris had been a very, very grubby shepherd, still smelling like goats. He probably scrubbed up a bit. These kind of hospitality laws maybe wouldn't have extended all the way through different types of people. So bear that in mind. So Menelaus welcomes him in. Of course he does, because Menelaus is he doesn't want to upset the gods. And Paris comes into the house, and Menelaus gives him food and gives him snacks and gives him somewhere to sleep and lets him tell his tales. And all the while, Paris has got his eye on Helen, who's sitting beside Menelaus, who is the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. And it doesn't take very long for him to convince her to run away with him. Remembering, I always imagine Menelaus as being a really unpleasant character. So I don't think she needed much persuasion if this sort of young, handsome prince shows up. And you've got this kind of, there will have been, Menelaus was much older than her, angry, grumpy husband. So she got up and left. Now, it is important for you to remember that hospitality laws, xenia applied not just to Menelaus, but they applied to Paris as well. Paris is supposed to be a good guest. Now, there's some things that guests can do badly, and we'll talk a bit about that later. Like, you've got a guest in your house, there's some things that you wouldn't really like. But I think that Paris kind of takes the biscuit with the worst thing you can possibly do, which is go into someone's house and take their wife and then run away. And that's what he does. So he not only offends Menelaus, or obviously destroys Menelaus, it's a terrible thing to do, but he also does something which is very, very bad in the eyes of the gods. And that's really important. Now, he's already upset a couple of gods already. Let's not forget there's 2 goddesses that didn't get picked, and they're already pretty grumpy. It's important for you to know, because everything that happens in this story, it doesn't just happen between humans. There's also a lot of fighting between gods as well. And it all comes from this. So he does something so bad. This is just terrible. Got invited in, got given something to eat, and then nicked his wife. So they sailed off, and I think that Paris will have known exactly what he's done and had known how bad it was. So he got into a ship very quickly and sailed off home to his father's city, which is called Troy, which was the most well-defended city in the world as they knew it. It had these huge walls. It was almost impenetrable. You could barely get kind of like, they had little bits for you to get boats and get people into, but it was really, really strong. It was really rich as well. It was this amazingly prosperous city. And they went in, slammed the gates, and hid out. Can you imagine what it would have been like for Priam and for his dad and for all his brothers, the other princes, to kind of find out that this very kind of prominent woman has been stolen from a very angry lord and has been taken to your town? You'd be a bit worried. You might be a bit angry with Paris. There's one other thing I haven't said about Menelaus. Not only was he a prominent lord, he had a very famous brother. Now, Menelaus' brother was a man called Agamemnon, and he was about as close to being the king of Greece as he could have got at the time. There wasn't really quite the same thing because Greece wasn't really united in the same way, but he was so powerful. So Agamemnon heard about this. Well, Menelaus immediately went round to Agamemnon's house and said, my wife's just been stolen by this prince from Troy. What are we going to do? And Agamemnon, at the time, there's a kind of a few different ways of thinking about it. Maybe Agamemnon was just a good brother and he was like, oh yeah, you know what? The gods have been insulted because Xenia's been broken. You've been insulted because your wife's been taken. I'm going to get your wife back. But another part of Agamemnon will have been thinking, I'm king of Greece. Troy was just outside of Greece. It was more like in the kind of Middle East area. I wonder if he was thinking, is this a really good excuse for me to get a really cool city and take it over? So Agamemnon says, of course, brother, we will go and we will get Helen back. And we're going to take all of my army and all of your army and everyone else that we know, all the famous warriors that we know, and we're going to get her. So that's where we are going to end the story for today. We've got Paris and Helen hanging out in Troy, and we've got Agamemnon and Menelaus plotting to basically attack Troy and get Helen back. So I'm going to really quickly take you through the questions. I'm not going to take too long because I know that this video is already fairly long. So I've called this lesson Stealing Helen. Here's a picture that somebody came up with of what they think she would look like. If you Google like Helen or Helen of Troy is usually what you've got to Google, you'll find there's so many different pictures and people had different, all the way, this story's been retold and retold and retold, and everyone's got a bit of a different idea of what the most beautiful woman in the world would look like. So you can decide whether you think, I think she's standing really weird. I don't think I'd ever stand like that. In the background here, you can actually see Troy, just see the high walls and things like that. Just to remind you, by the way, nobody really knows if Troy was real or if any of these characters were real. And no one's ever really found the ruins or any evidence of there being a big city where we think it is. So here are your questions. So there are questions actually going to be mostly about Xenia. For the first question, I'd like you to write your own definition of Xenia. Now, I've kind of said a few things. I've got a bit of a line at the top of what it kind of means, but what do you personally think it means? Okay. Number 2, what do you think makes a good... Oh, sorry, not you. What, in terms of the Greek laws of Xenia, makes a good host? What does a good host have to do? Okay. So remember, what did I tell you? What do they have to do? And at the same time, what in the Greek times did a good guest have to do? Okay. So they didn't... I think I said a couple of details. I don't want to really give it away. I wonder if maybe I would make that 1 mark. I probably will. So what does a good guest have to do? And question 4, what reasons did Menelaus have for going to war with Troy? I actually am pretty sure I'm meaning to say Agamemnon. So I'm gonna... Oh, I'm not 100% that's the spelling. But again, you'll get the PowerPoint for this and it will probably be correct. What reasons did Agamemnon have for going to war with Troy? So I did explain quite a few reasons. And question 5, what do you think Menelaus will need to do to get Helen back? And in your answer, I need you to think about like how well defended Troy is. How is he going to get Helen back from Troy? What's he going to need? Is he going to need to find some recruit? What, I don't know. You tell me. Okay, so those questions are all pretty easy. I would like you to remember the word Xenia. It's such a cool word, really, really important, and see if you can use it around the dinner table and really impress your family. Just come up with an ancient Greek word. Here is the extension. So this was so easy. I'm pretty sure that nearly all of you will have time to do the extension task because the extension task is so quick. So I've called it the extension task, but I do reckon most people have time. So what I would like you to do, oh, that's gone weird, is write a Xenia rulebook for your own household. Okay? So remember, that's what should guests and hosts and things like do in your own household. So I've put a couple of rules for the Bircham household. So the Bircham household Xenia rules. Number one, shoes off in the hall. I really don't like it when people wear their shoes in my living room and things like that. I don't know why. There's no reason for it. I just feel like they're not fully comfortable. I'm not comfortable. There's also obviously the thing of traipsing through mud. Number two, always accept a cup of tea. I will offer you a cup of tea if you come around to my house, and it makes me sad if you say no, because I don't know, it's a very friendly thing to do. And number three, I always tell people, just try to ignore the dog. She gets very overexcited when we have guests around. Just ignore her, let her calm down. Here's a picture of my dog, but I'm fairly sure when I originally put this picture in, I put it in the right way around and not really crushed. But there you go. So I would like you to come up with your own Xenia rulebook, at least 5 rules, please, maybe upwards of 10 if you can think of lots. Maybe you've got lots of Xenia rules, kind of things that you don't really like guests to break. Feel free to also put in some rules that you think the hosts have to have as well in your household. So my Xenia rule is, for myself, is I always like to be able to cook a meal or offer food for whoever comes around. I love cooking for other people, so that would be one of my Xenia rules for the host. So that is your task. You've got your questions here, and then you've got your household rules that you think that people should stick to when they come around to your house. You might have to ask a parent or whoever's at home if you're not sure if there are any rules. And maybe there aren't, and that's brilliant. Maybe your families are less grumpy than me, who will subtly stare at your feet still in shoes and wonder if you're going to take them off soon. Okay, guys, that is all for today. It's been quite a bit of a long video, so I'll head off. I'm not sure about how things are going to be going for the next few weeks. I want to be recording as many of these parts of the story so you can keep on listening. But hopefully I'll see you next week. Goodbye.